Hello and welcome to the show. This week's FailRace versus the community, we would go racing with cars from the Hot Rod Revival category. Now, we weren't building them to that category's homologation spec, we instead built them to C-Class. Our first race was at the Laguna Seca circuit, with plenty of vehicles, as per usual, going 2 and 3 and very nearly 4 wide up ahead. And in fact, as they head down towards the next corner, they would try and fit 4 cars wide. The 32 Ford on the outside would end up a little bit across the sand, amazingly gets it all back together, and they survive those first few corners. Now, while in C-Class, you know, there are various ways you could build your cars. You could focus more focus more on power, focus more on grip. Chances are, in comparison, these cars are going to be faster. They're going to be faster at a straight line, not so good through the corners. They simply don't have the chassis to be a monster through the turns, although there is still some variety. This 32 Ford, for example, quick down the straights. The Deluxe up ahead, not so fast when it came to the straights, but very good through the corners. It sweeps around the outside to keep the position at the top of the first part of the hill. However, up towards the corkscrew, yeah, the green car, with too much straight line speed, can position himself on the inside. Not a straightforward pass. Mine is the Deluxe. Will fight his corner down the corkscrew, but is not quite able to draw back alongside as they head through the next turn. It's a very, very big slide from the green car, and we'd see a lot of that throughout the race. I was driving a Chevrolet 150, get a big two-wheeled moment, can't quite get a move completed on the Deluxe, and that two-wheeled moment had cost me a bit of time. This would quickly develop into a race-long battle between the two Chevy 150s, trying to vie for dominance, although in my attempts at looking for a way past the Deluxes tend to be quite good through the corners. More handling builds on these, but was slightly slower than me down the straight, so I was unable to draw alongside, and my big two-wheel moment again, that's 2 in about 4 corners, would cost me a position as the blue car would go soaring past. Again, as we break up towards the corkscrew, not much that I can do at this stage other than get back into line and follow, try and recover some positions at a later date. I should also point out we did have to ban the Corvette C1 from this event, because that would be massively OP, basically, compared to everything else that was racing. And the selection of cars we did have were actually all pretty damn close. Now, as I mentioned at the start, this Deluxe here was struggling a bit for straight line speed, and that made it a bit difficult to, well, get past anybody, with just about every car being quicker than it in a straight line. When you got to an acceleration zone, everything would pull away. When you got to a corners, you wouldn't necessarily be able to go as fast as you'd want to, because there was a car struggling for grip in front of you. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one to find a way past in those particular situations. You've got to hope the cars ahead make a little bit of a mistake, and sure enough, the Chevy 150 there, a wheel out on the sand. It's an opportunity for the Deluxe, but it's not a big enough one. The Chevy too quick up towards the corkscrew and able to get to safety. Back towards the front of the field, a Mercury Coupe was leading the way. This Deluxe was trying to recover his way back towards the front. Sneaks up the inside of the Ford Woody into the final corner. However, the Woody was very, very quick down the straight. One of the faster cars we saw in terms of straight line speed, and that would be immediately back past the Deluxe. And you can see the size of the gap that the Ford has got by the time we get towards turn 1. The Deluxe closes that all back up through these first corners. But, you know, when you're trying to get that pass done, you need to be close in the braking zone, really, to get it completed. And the Deluxe, well, was struggling a little bit to stay within range. This sort of group further back, this sort of the lower parts of the top 10 would remain close throughout the race, which, you know, is what you want to see. There are a lot of big groups of cars battling for position, and I'll be honest, in terms of this as a video, it was quite difficult to pick and choose the bits. I could have pointed the camera in many different directions, and there would have been a lot of stuff going on in all 3 races, in fact, not just here at Laguna. It was a incredibly busy race. The poor purple Deluxe still struggling with its straight line speed, being able to, well, getting mugged by the 32 Ford. My race-long battle continued with the blue Chevy. This is what I mean. I'm going to point to the camera wherever, because we spent about 4 or 5 laps fighting like this, lap after lap, corner after corner. I mean, looking for a way past. I have a big dive up the inside into the final turn. I get my car alongside. I get my car past. Problem was, mine was the slower of the two in the straight line. Not by a huge amount. Around the corners, mine was the better car. As you see, we head over the crest. It was, yeah, pretty evenly matched over the course of lap, which made for an interesting battle. Just changing position after changing position around turn 1 we went, with the blue car being able to get that place back again. Unfortunately at the front for the Mercury, that would be involved with a tangle in the Ford Deluxe, which would drop them both down the order, the Mercury to second, which meant that the Woody, fortunately for the Woody, he would inherit a victory. While, okay, the actual victory was helped by the cars ahead having a crash, it was still a mighty fast vehicle. Our battle between the two Chevys, we were not really keeping up very well with the Woody. So while it might, yeah, be a slightly inherited victory, it was still a mighty fine performance. And I think perhaps the first ever victory for a Woody in a versus the community. For me, well, after the kerfuffle with the Mercury and Ford, I would have an opportunity to jump up into third place. However, through the final few corners, it was anything but settled. A Plymouth Fury had joined our little group on the run to the final turn, very much 3 wide. Into that corner, I hug the inside and make sure there is no gap for any cutback from the blue car, and while he does have a bit better acceleration, it's not close enough. He will run out of straight and I would take a podium with the Chevy. A fantastic first race. A shame that the Mercury and Ford got tangled together on the final lap, but on the whole, a lot of good racing was had throughout the field, and then some celebratory sliding from my Chevy. Please Don't Eat Me would take the victory with that Woody Impega in second, with the Mercury Coupe, while my Chevy would end up in third. Race number 2, and we headed to the Sonoma short layout. This is a fast circuit. A lot of corners, a lot of medium speed corners, and not too much in the way of overtaking spots, and very little in the way of straights. In a field of cars in which nothing is really amazingly good handling. Some are better than others, but most of them are not amazingly good handling. So yeah, it was a tall order. It was a tall order in getting all of these vehicles around this track. I had started mid-pack and was busy battling my way against a Ford Woody, who I can't figure out how the Woody suddenly got a lot of speed. I don't know whether there was a bump from an invisible car or whether the brakes on that were completely shot, because he applies the brakes at the same point as the rest of us. Like I watched from the telemetry, apply the points at the same point as the rest of us and just doesn't get stopped and flies up into the tyre bundle. So a little bit of weirdness goes on there. It might have been, yeah, an invisible car giving him a bit of assistance down there. Either way, didn't actually take anybody out. Did a really good job of, when I realised it wasn't stopping, avoiding all of the cars. I would pick up another position as a 32 Ford gets himself in trouble through the S's. Actually almost takes out a Holden Ute through that part, trying frantically to recover the car. The S's section is not fun. I say not fun in these cars. It's tough. It's very tough in these sorts of cars. There's also a Holden Ute, I think, with a rotary engine, because it's making an interesting buzz, which probably not quite in the spirit of hot rods, but we'll accept it anyway. I was busy fighting my way past another Mercury Coupe. All of the speed around the start-finish straight like a sweep on the outside. A Plymouth Fury had got to the lead. Chevys in second and third. The second place car struggling for pace around this circuit. The white Chevy here struggling for speed and was starting to back the field up. The black car looking for a way to get past. As I said, getting overtakes done down the S's is not the easiest things to do, and it's a big slide from the black Chevy. Manages to gather it all back up on his way through that first part there. However, loses one place to the Mercury. That's then going hunting after second place. The Ford F100 is right in this group as well, as they head round the fast right-hander. There's a big purple boat coming to join the group. It's going to be 2-3 wide into the hairpin. The Chevy gets the preferred line on the inside. The Mercury was busy trying to find a way past second. Wasn't quite defending well enough from the onrushing horde behind, and despite the big slide and the trip across the grass, the Chevy 150 would actually end the lap in just about the same position that he started it in, sweeping around the outside of turn 1 on that Mercury to move back up into third place, while the white 150 a little bit wide through those first corners. Again, much like we saw at Laguna, I could have pointed the replay camera at any number of groups of cars. It was another, again, despite the expected difficulties with these sorts of cars, at this kind of a track, there was so much going on throughout the field. This pink Plymouth Fury was trying to work his way up through the order, having started down the order on the randomised grid. It is a side-by-side manoeuvre. Again, that's a fast corner. That's a fast corner to be going too wide in cars that are a little bit uncooperative at the best of times, but gets the move done cleanly, gets the braking sorted into the hairpin, and that will be the Plymouth up another position to go and try and chase down the buzzy Ute. I had run into, well, traffic. In fact, we were all still stuck behind that second-place car. Eventually, the white Chevy running out of grip to fight off the black 150, although I was now fighting against the F100. The Mercury was in the mix right now as well. We're too wide, 3 wide through various bits of the circuit. We were constantly changing sides, changing positions, any which way we could get an advantage, and we weren't going to go 3 wide into this next corner. The Mercury gets a little bit squeezed in the middle. It's just not quite enough space for everybody. We get through, you know, with minor amounts of contact in all of that. I'm now busy chasing off after that F100, but it's not much you can do down this stage. Even with a little bit of a trip across the grass for the Ford sliding back onto the tarmac, we will have to be a bit careful down there, and I'm a bit wide. This time it's the Chevy's turn across the grass. The Mercury's looking at getting up the inside, can't do it. I'm going to cover that inside line, kind of half as an attack on the F100, but also as a defence against that Mercury. Mercury tries to duck underneath me, can't do it, ends up across the curb a little bit, but has such a terrible line coming out of the corner. There's no speed for that. I'm still chasing down that F100, looking for a way past around the outside of turn 1. Is dodgy, although was pretty much using all of the road that we could possibly get away with. My Chevy was very quick down the straights. I was faster than all of these cars in terms of straight line speed, but here at Sonoma, you just can't use that speed very often. There's just not enough straights to be able to use that to get the passes completed. Now, the Holden Ute was holding on fairly well. Perhaps one of the more unusual cars in this particular category, It was holding on in terms of lap times, but very, very difficult to drive. The issue, well, as we see through turn 1, is its fondness of trying to fall over constantly. It was on 2 wheels through turn 1. It's on 2 wheels through that sort of second corner bit, and that's not helpful. That's not helpful at all. You lose so much time fighting the car in that manner. If it could get a clean lap, it was quick, but trying to get a clean lap when the car just constantly wants to try and grip roll is, yeah, very, very tough indeed. The fight for third place continued. It continued to rage on. The F100 now looking for a way past that 150. I was stuck with very little in the way of places to go. A Bel Air had caught up to this group, and he too was now trying to look for a way past. There are 2 good overtaking spots, 2 main overtaking spots at Sonoma. A few other ones that are possible. The F100 trying one of them around here. The hairpin's where it's most likely to go down, and we all knew this. The 150 defends heavily from the F100. I'm on the outside of everybody. The Bel Air sneaks through on the middle as the F100 and 150 kind of get a little bit tangled on 2 tighter lines against the tyre bundles. The Bel Air profits getting 3 cars in 1 corner. Me stuck way out wide was now trying to make the most of the exit of that hairpin down towards turn 1. The white Chevy, though, a little bit better through the corners. Certainly runs it in very deep through the first part of that, and I'm still stuck trying to go the long way round in a little bit less cooperative 150, not wanting to give up an inch as we head up the hill. Still not quite able to get a pass completed. I can get a good run, although a little bit of a trip across the grass. The Mercury Coupe is caught up in all of this as we're around the outside of another corner. Can't quite do it. Better to yield the position, focus on that exit. The 150 chases me to the inside, but again, I'm not going to be giving up. Knew I needed to get this pass done quickly if we would have any chance of chasing down that Bel Air for third. Eventually do get the position, can get the braking sorted and move up. You can see the horde of cars that were catching. The Plymouth Fury being one of that horde that was able to kind of profit from the big, I say the big hold-up, but the big amount of battling slowing this group down as the Fury is looking at side by side through the S's. The Mercury in a little bit of trouble, a big slide from that car, but it's not quite lost the place. Again, the F100 struggling with that particular section. A few trips across the grass. The Plymouth's going to go for the second overtake of the day up the inside around that right hander. The Mercury, if you are on the outside there, you can still get a pretty good run off the turn. They're fairly even. However, now there's an F100 in the way. It is the Fury to the inside at the hairpin. The Mercury's trying to go with it, although on that wider line you can still get a good exit out of the corner. The F100 only loses one position in all of that, as the Plymouth, though, does get the pass completed. At the front, it was another Fury that was running well, having got to the lead early on, had been managing to make a pretty sizable gap, while the rest of us were bottled up behind second. The black Chevy, having finally been released, would chase down the Fury, but ran out of laps. Just ran out of time. Another lap, and the Plymouth might have had a tough time. The Plymouth might have had a very tough time holding that Chevy off, because he had caught at a pretty decent rate. And likewise, the Bel Air and my Chevy 150, once released from traffic, were setting similar lap times. Could have been a very interesting four-way battle had we all got clear of traffic, but that was not the way that it would go. The Plymouth getting the moves done early on in the race and able to make that clean air would take the victory. While I was clear in fourth place, now fifth was still very much up for grabs on this final lap. The big pink boat was now trying to find a way past an incredibly stubborn 150 as they head up towards the hairpin for the final time. There's no way past on the inside. However, the Plymouth gets a bit better run. He's going to sneak his nose up the inside into the final hairpin. Again, the 150 chases him all the way across to the inside, but the Plymouth is not going to give up on that pass, and the Fury will get the move completed. The F100 still fending off against that Mercury as they head around the final corner. The Plymouth's going to get fifth, the Chevy in sixth. The Mercury does just beat the pickup truck across the line. Good finish for everybody in the mid-pack. Again, another incredible race. A huge amount going on through all of this. The lead two were a long way clear of third, but once more, the hot rods had proved to be a huge amount of fun. To the podium, it was Muri that would take victory with that Plymouth. GTR Foxy HD in second with the Chevrolet, and Stig Power in third with the Chevy Bel Air. Race number 3, and we would head to the Sebring Club Circuit. There was a potential for rain. It was only a 40% chance of rain by the end of the race, but there was always that possibility. A lovely clear sky, though, for the first corner. Again, everybody making it around the hairpin surprisingly well. Considering the big boats that we were driving, there was very little in the way of escaping the track at that particular juncture. We're 2 and 3 and maybe 4 wide as we head down the back straight. I get a little bit of a tap from one of the other Chevys there, but again, we all get through the next corner. I think the Ford Deluxe outbraked himself and ended up out wide, losing a whole heap of positions in the process. I started a fair way down the order, in fact, in this race, but a solid launch and a good first lap so far, as I'm pretty sure the Deluxe was up on 2 wheels in the background there, meant that, I'd made up a decent number of positions, helped by a 32 Ford having, running out of grip. A little bit of a running wide moment, a wheel on the grass as soon as you do that, especially when you've got quick cars behind. My Chevy was a fast accelerating car. As soon as you end up out there, somebody's going to pounce in these opening laps as we head down the start-finish straight. Once again, this race, very much like the previous two, had a huge amount going on. The race winner from the first round, the Woody, had started at the back of the field and was struggling to make progress just from the sheer number of cars around him. Trying to get up through the order was not an easy feat when you've got cars going 2 and 3 wide ahead. The Ford Deluxe here was again suffering a little bit from the lack of straight line speed. Was able to carry a lot of corner speed, but struggling to carry it when around other cars. You know, these much faster cars down the straights were basically blocking a lot of the corner, and the poor Deluxe was not able to do a huge amount about it in all this. I was continuing to run fairly well. Had got the black 150 behind me for company. Mine a little better through the corners, his a bit faster down the straight. We were working our way towards the front, catching up towards a Mercury Coupe. It was again another car struggling a little bit with straight line speed as we raced down the start-finish straight. The black Chevy goes to the left, I am to the right. We both mug the Mercury towards the first corner, almost going 3 wide into the braking zone. The Mercury better through the turns than we were, but again, he's now running into that issue of so many big cars in front of him. There's just not quite the space to put your vehicle up ahead. Bel Air fighting with the Ford F100, and that Bel Air would get the pass done. Both Chevys were now clear of the Mercury, the black Chevy, with that superior straight line speed. I then get boxed in behind the F100, run out of places to go. The black Chevy's around the outside and moved up another position. It was all constant change, pretty much. Now, unlike the opening couple of races where the leader had been able to kind of build up some gaps, that wasn't happening here. That was not happening here at all. The lead Mercury had company from a Plymouth Fury. They didn't really change positions. The Plymouth was never quite within range of getting an overtake, and the Mercury was just fast enough to stay out of an attack distance. Just fast enough to stay out of an attack distance. Apparently also the paint job of the Mercury was a random weird glitch from Forza applying different liveries onto the car, so the driver just kept it, hence why it looks rather peculiar. The midfield quickly once again became a rather giant train of cars. Me and the black Chevy 150 would eventually break away from this little group. Plymouth Fury's here going for a fight, and it is the crazy taxi that goes around the outside. It's a good pass, actually. That's a long way to go around the outside, not just of one corner but of the second one as well, eventually managing to get that car back into line. Yeah, you see at the front of this group, our 2 Chevys, the Ford F100, there's a Bel Air involved in all of this. Again, great variety of cars. Great variety of cars in this were running quickly, running competitively as we head again down the start-finish straight. This particular Plymouth Fury struggling a little bit more with the straight line speed. Wasn't one of the vehicles that could mug that Mercury down the main straight. Another odd-sounding Holden Ute was here. This particular Holden, again, not the easiest of cars to drive. The Utes were not an easy vehicle to get working. Was struggling a little bit more with his straight line speed. The 32 Fords could be very, very quick down the straights, depending on how they were built, but often quite uncooperative when you came to the corners. So while the Ford has got the position back, it would only be for a brief moment. It's a big dive from the Holden. A good pass, though, getting up the inside. The Ford's not really got the grip to hold it. As we saw the Plymouth Fury go around the outside at that corner, but when you're struggling for grip, yeah, that's a tough place. That's a tough place to be stuck on the outside, and you definitely don't want to be hitting curbs hard when you're driving one of the Utes, because they, yeah, don't particularly like it. While our 2 Chevy 150s would gradually pull away from this big group, the F100 would be left to try and fend off from the Plymouth. The Ford perhaps a tad bit quicker through the corners. The Plymouth a little bit faster down the straight, although both very evenly matched. The Bel Air was very quick down the straights. However, once again, couldn't really find a way past. Couldn't really use that speed because you've got cars constantly going too wide ahead of you. There's nowhere. This is not a particularly wide track here at Sebring. This is not a particularly wide track at all, so going 3 wide, never really going to work. You're also going to slow yourself down massively trying to fit 3 cars through a corner, so you're just sort of stuck watching and waiting for perhaps an opportunity to arise. The Ford runs wide. Just that wheel across the grass slows him down a fraction, but it's not enough for the Plymouth. The Fury's looking around the outside of the final turn, but he doesn't have the grip to make that one stick as they head now onto the start-finish straight once more. The Plymouth is right tucked under the back of the Ford. The Ford's going to cover the inside of the road, though. He's going to keep that car on the inside. The Bel Air now wants to try and get involved, but doesn't have anywhere to go. He can have all the speed he likes, but there's nowhere to put your car as they're again side by side into turn 1. it was a fantastic battle going on in this group, and the Ford was doing a really good job of fending off the pack behind. Such a good job, in fact, that it wasn't long before even more cars were joining in. The Woody had caught up to this group and bought another F100 to join in. Eventually, the red Ford would make a mistake into the hairpin. That would cost him almost all of the positions. A single outbraking moment into the hairpin. 4 cars had got through. The Woody was trying to join in. The F100, the white F100, was now trying to join in up the inside. But again, the Woody was running into the same trouble. It was a very quick car. Was faster perhaps than the cars he was running around, but so many vehicles were up ahead that you've just got nowhere to go. Again, they're too wide up ahead. The Woody's looking around the outside, but there's a Mercury in the way. A big slide from the Woody wouldn't help. Unfortunately, it is at that point in which the replay cuts out, as well as you can see there. So we do miss out on the final lap, which is, well, a bit of a shame. However, I can tell you, at the front, it actually kind of remained quite similar. The Mercury was fending off from that Fury. While they did actually have a bit of a coming together on the final lap, it would eventually go the way of the Mercury once more, as he still has to do it the hard way around the outside of the Plymouth. The Fury tried. In the closing stages, the Fury did get close enough to start trying to look for a way past, just couldn't make a move stick. There's big two-wheel moments from that Mercury. The Mercury and the Holden were providing the entertainment, certainly for two-wheeled action. Our 2 Chevys behind were actually fractionally faster. Again, it could be another story that we could well have seen a 4-way battle for the lead had things panned out a little bit differently. On the final lap, we did actually catch to these 2, but again, no time for us to do anything about overtaking them. It was another absolutely fantastic race. To the podium, Impega would take victory with his Mercury. Muri in second, with the Plymouth GTR Foxy in third, while I would end up in fourth. Now, there is a general saying when it comes to FailRace that the sillier the cars we race, the better the racing we get, and that seemed to be pretty damn accurate today. These vehicles are not necessarily the easiest of cars to drive. Even in C-Class, most of them were probably putting out somewhere around the 400 horsepower mark, certainly 300 to 400 horsepower in cars with very old chassis, very old tyres. And yet we had probably some of the best racing, if not the best versus the community we've had on Forza 7 with these lot. There was so much going on. In fact, you can tell by the length of this video. And even this was me having to trim it down quite a bit, because there was so much going on throughout the field in pretty much all of the races. A lot of different cars were very competitive. Yeah, there were cars that were faster, there were cars that were better handling and so on, but overall, it did make for some really very, very good racing. And I really like my Chevy. The 150 was a very, very nice car. I got, a third and 2 fourths. I'm not even disappointed about not getting race wins and so on, just because I was involved in excellent battles the entire time. So, there we go. That is going to be it for this video, however. The next FailRace versus the community, you can sign up on our forums, will be held on Thursday the 22nd of February. We are going to go racing with the new Audi TT race car, so you will need the latest DLC for that. It's going to be run completely stock, no tuning allowed on that car. It is a bit faster, perhaps, than the normal cars you run. It's well up into S-Class, but it's also a pretty good fun car to drive. So, yeah, it could be a little bit different, but hopefully there will be plenty of close racing. If it can replicate these things, if it can replicate the hot rods, would be very, very good indeed. That, though, is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.